In 2016, 3 men made their way to the woods of the Siskiyou Mountains of southwest Oregon for a day of hunting deer. What was supposed to be a simple, routine day in the woods turned out to be anything but. What happened that left one family living a nightmare that they haven't been able to wake up from? Stick around to the end to find out. But first, if you're new here and you enjoy videos of haunted locations and mysteries surrounding those who vanish into thin air, then hit that subscribe button because those are the type of videos we put out here on this channel. Also, don't forget to tickle that bell icon so you don't miss a single video we put out. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button and comment down below and share this video with everyone so YouTube knows that we're worth promoting. Now let's dig into this unsolved case. Friday morning, October 14th, 2016, 41-year-old Shawn Higgins, his 21-year-old son Trevor, and Trevor's uncle Will departed the small town of Coos Bay along the Oregon coast and set out on a hunting trip for some blacktail. Blacktail is a type of deer that's pretty common here on the west coast. The 3 men made their way to the woods of the Siskiyou Mountains located in southwest Oregon. The Siskiyou Mountain Ranges is one of the largest mountain ranges in Oregon. Given the fact that Oregon is full of mountain ranges and forests, it says a lot. Shawn and Trevor would drop Will off at a separate location before they made their way to where Shawn would be hunting. They planned on coming back a short while later to pick up Will. The 3 men were planning on hunting in an area known as Bear Camp. This hunting trip wasn't supposed to be some 2 or 3 day hunting trip. Hell, they weren't even planning on staying overnight. This was just supposed to be a very short, simple day trip. But this trip would turn out to be anything but simple. After Shawn and his son made it to the area that Shawn would be hunting, Trevor drove the vehicle a couple miles down the road to the next trailhead. He waited at the vehicle for his dad to make his way up the narrow footpath that ran alongside the road that he was hunting on. If you're wondering why Trevor never went out hunting with his dad or his uncle, well, Trevor had gone out hunting the day before and he tagged his buck then. Normally, when you are hunting in Oregon, you are issued just 1 tag per type of animal per season. This would be the reason that Trevor stayed at the vehicle instead of hunting with his dad and his uncle. According to a few reports, it was estimated to take about an hour, give or take, for Shawn to reach the vehicle and his son. Shawn's wife was once quoted telling NBC Dateline, "We knew that area well. When we were teenagers, we'd skip school and go turkey hunting. Since then, it's always been a place for our family." With this information, it's safe to say that it shouldn't have taken Shawn that long to make his way to the vehicle. But as Trevor waited, an hour would come and an hour would go, with no sign of his dad. Now, most hunters know that not everything always goes as planned when you're out there hunting in the woods. Most of the time, something always happens to alter in some way, shape, or form the plans that you had come up with. So Trevor wasn't alarmed when his dad hadn't shown up at the time he expected him to. He decided to wait a while longer, thinking he was going to see his dad come out of the woods at any moment. But more time would come and more time would go, and there was still no sign of his dad. Trevor was at a crossroads. He knew that he and his dad had told his uncle that they would be back to pick him up a short time later. But he also knew that he couldn't just leave his dad alone out in the woods, not knowing what could have happened to him and why he hadn't shown up. So many thoughts had to have been flooding Trevor's mind. Is he okay? Is he hurt? He can't be lost. He knows these woods better than anyone else. One thing's for sure. I know as a father, I would never leave my children alone, wondering and worrying about me, unless it was completely out of my control. I'm sure Trevor knew this of his dad as well, making this situation that much more serious. But to make matters worse, it's October, and the Oregon woods and mountains in October can, and often do, become stormy with weather changing drastically without warning. Unfortunately, for these 3 men, the weather would not be on their side. A storm was coming in, and it was going to get nasty quick. Trevor knew that time was against him. But around 3 p.m., after hours of waiting, Trevor's Uncle Will came walking up to the vehicle after hiking in the frigid, stormy weather several miles from where he had been dropped off. You could imagine that Will was probably not happy about this, of course, completely unaware of his brother-in-law's disappearance. Sensing that his uncle wasn't happy, he informed Will that his dad hadn't made it out of the woods yet. This left Will just as concerned as his nephew was. With the weather deteriorating all around them, Trevor and Will know that this is not an ideal situation to be in. But, pushing forward, they come up with a plan to search for Shawn. As the winds were getting stronger and the skies getting much darker, making any possible signs that Shawn might have left that much harder to spot, they execute their plan. They were hoping that they would find Shawn and get out of these woods before the storm gets any worse. But Trevor and his uncle were both unaware of the nightmare that would soon follow. Will would start his search from the trailhead that Shawn was supposed to exit from, while Trevor would take the four-wheeler they had brought with them up to the trailhead where he had dropped his dad off at. They planned on, at some point, meeting up in the middle after one of them finds Shawn. When Trevor reaches the beginning of the trailhead, he realizes that the trailhead is too narrow for the four-wheeler that he had, so he had no choice but to leave it behind and continue hiking on foot. But in all the panic and rushing to get out there and search for his dad, Trevor realized that he had made a crucial mistake. Trevor had failed to bring a cell phone or even a compass. He was so worried about finding his dad that he didn't even think about his own safety. After walking the narrow footpath for a while, Trevor came up on a clearing. From there, the trail split. Trevor needed to make a choice. Hoping his uncle had found his dad, Trevor took the trail to the right, thinking it was going to lead him back to the road. This would end up being another crucial mistake, because unknown to Trevor, the trail led deeper into the woods instead of straight back to the road. At this point, it was getting darker, and the weather was getting worse by the minute. As Trevor would move faster to get out of the woods and get to the vehicle, not realizing he's getting himself deeper into the woods, he would come up on a draw with a creek at the bottom. Now, a draw in the woods is a low spot in the land in between two ridges, kind of like a small version of a canyon. Trevor had nowhere to go but down. It was extremely difficult for Trevor to see, as it was getting extremely close to being pitch black outside. Plus, the storm that was clearly raging on, making every step Trevor took that much more difficult, didn't seem to be letting up at all. Trevor knew that the safest thing to do at this point would be just to stop where he was and make camp for the night. But this wouldn't be a camping trip like we all take with family. Trevor didn't have a tent. Though he was in the woods, he didn't have any dry wood, because everything around him was completely soaked from all the rain that was relentlessly pouring down all over him and the mountain. It was wet, it was windy, and it was really cold. Trevor made a shelter using downed tree limbs, leaning them up against a tree. It wasn't perfect, but it was going to have to do. He then tried to make a fire using anything he could find that was close to being dry, but that would turn out to be unsuccessful. Trevor knew that this night was going to be miserable, but he couldn't help but think of his dad. He kept telling himself that his uncle had found his dad and that they both had made it out of the woods. He did whatever he could to keep positive. By the next morning, Trevor was extremely wet and cold. Thunder was still booming, and the lightning was still lighting up the sky. The storm hadn't let up a bit. Trevor got up, grabbed his gear, and started making his way towards a section of the woods he thought would lead him back to the road. But just a short distance later, something told him to stop. He realized that by now, there were most likely searchers out there looking for him. So Trevor turned around and went back to where he made camp the night before. He wasn't wrong. There were searchers looking for him. In fact, the Curry County Sheriff's Office has started a search party with about 80 search and rescue members from surrounding counties, as well as countless friends and family members of his. Aside from doing a few things to make his shelter and area he was hunkered down in more survivable, there wasn't much else he could do except to be as patient as he possibly could. He tried to make another fire, but again, it did no good. But not everything he tried failed. With all the rain coming down, he knew he would have to figure out a way to collect some of it for drinking. So, he used an extra raincoat he had with him to collect the rain, as well as to better insulate his shelter. From there, it would be a test of how mentally strong he truly was, and how much patience he truly had. As the first couple days out there would go by, Trevor would occasionally call out for help whenever the weather would allow him to. Though sounds do travel quite a ways in the woods, that's not the case when there's a thunderstorm going full force. But as day 4 would come, so would a sign of hope. This day being lost in the woods of Oregon's treacherous Siskiyou Mountains would be a day of hopes and disappointments. As the day begins, Trevor would hear something in the distance. His hope skyrocketed when he heard dogs barking. Shortly after hearing the dogs, though, he then hears what sounds like people talking. He yells out, hoping someone, anyone, can hear him. Unfortunately, it would be to no avail, because a short time later, the same silence that Trevor had become accustomed to for the first few days was back. But the silence wouldn't last. A little later in the morning, Trevor would again hear something, but this time, it wasn't dogs, and it wasn't people talking. This time, Trevor can hear a helicopter. Excited that the possibility of being rescued is near, Trevor runs to a small clearing near his shelter, frantically waving his arms and then firing his rifle 3 times, praying that anyone in the helicopter would see him. But his prayers wouldn't be answered. Trevor watched as the helicopter flew further away until Trevor couldn't see it anymore. Trevor's small glimmer of hope had just vanished. By the morning of day 5, Trevor was suffering from severe hypothermia. He was mentally and physically exhausted. He needed a break, and he would get one. After several days of thunderstorms and rain hammering down on him, the storm had finally broke, and the sun had shown itself. This had to have been a huge mental boost for Trevor, and just before the afternoon would arrive, hope would show itself once again. Trevor again can hear a helicopter. When Trevor finally sees it, he starts to wave just as he did before. Unfortunately, the helicopter would fly away. This undoubtedly was absolutely crushing. But a few hours later, Trevor again can hear something. Voices can be heard in the distance, just as the day before. Once again, Trevor yells as loud as he could, but this time, Trevor got more than just silence. This time, 2 men would walk out into the clearing. These 2 men would be a part of the search and rescue teams. Trevor, while expressing a flood of emotions, after surviving 5 days in the cold and stormy weather, with no fire and no adequate shelter, knew it was time for him to finally go home. But though he was getting out of the wilderness, he wouldn't be out of the woods. Trevor was suffering from severe hypothermia, so much so that rescuers had to have him airlifted to a hospital. But before that would happen, Trevor needed to do something. For the last 5 days, he's been telling himself that his uncle had found his dad, and that they had made it out of the woods. So, after gathering enough courage, he would ask the rescuers if they were searching for 1 or 2 hunters. Their answer was absolutely devastating. 2, they said. Trevor's father, Shawn, had yet to be found. Search and rescuers would continue the search for Shawn for 6 more days. But after a total of 11 days of several members from surrounding counties and countless family members and friends searching for the father and son, the search would be officially called off on October 25th, 2016. Trevor would go on to make a full recovery, but to this day, there have been no signs of what happened to Shawn. A piece of clothing, his rifle, nothing has been found. Someone who has hunted in these woods for over 2 decades had just simply vanished into thin air. Another quote that Shawn's wife made to NBC Dateline would suggest that even Shawn's family doesn't believe Shawn got lost at all. Again, she was quoted as saying, "I wake up every morning thinking about him, wondering where he is. I know he didn't just get lost. Something happened to him." I agree with Shawn's wife. I don't believe he got lost either. But that leaves us with the same question we find ourselves asking in almost all of these cases. Where in the hell are they? Thank you for joining us today. If you guys enjoyed this video, smash that like button and comment below on what you think happened to Shawn. Also, Shawn is still missing. If any of you out there have seen, know, or heard anything, or got any information on the whereabouts of Shawn, contact the number below. We'll see you on the next one. As always, much love and respect. Stay humble, stay safe.